The Ten Commandments. One of the things I've noticed as a criticism that often comes from non-religious people is how the Ten Commandments are essentially a very strict rule book. That if you break these arbitrary rules, you're going to hell. What's very interesting about the Ten Commandments is, well, first of all, it's also followed by 50 judgments. So there are 50 more smaller rules which proceed after. What's also very interesting is that Moses destroys the Ten Commandments when he sees the golden calf and the people have rejected God. And he actually has to go back and get it again. However, it's interesting that in the Old Testament, it only, at least in the Torah and through most of Kings, it only mentions the afterlife once and treats it as more of an underworld, which is called Sheol. So the afterlife is not really a present concept in the Old Testament. So when the Israelites are punished or they lose favor of God, their punishment is not an eternal damnation, but a punishment in the here and now, such as a rival army being able to overtake their country or something befalling them physically. So it's interesting because, one, technically the Ten Commandments no longer hold sway because they're the old covenant and now we have the new covenant. And there's plenty of verses in the New Testament about Jesus talking about the ability to do good deeds on the Sabbath. You shouldn't be able to be restricted from doing things that are good just because the Sabbath says you need to rest. What relevance is it then? And what did God mean when he said, these are the 10 things that thou shalt not do, if there was no punishment for it? I believe that you did still go to hell, but in the real world. I believe you can create a living hell for yourself if you disobey the 10 things in those texts. And it's not a magical, scary afterworld place, but a thing here and now. It's a mental space. I think if you look at it differently, it's asking the question, what person can still be happy and content with themselves after committing murder, adultery, theft? Even if you get away with it, the person who's going to persecute you is yourself, is your conscience in your brain, which knows you did something bad and you're trying to justify it to yourself. In fact, this is the entire second part of the plot of Crime and Punishment. When Raskolnikov eventually realizes his only road to salvation is to turn himself in for the murder he committed. And he does it in a religious way, that the only way to redemption is to go to jail for the number of years and get his redemption. And in a way, if you're a kind of person who says, well, I don't need a conscience, I should be able to do whatever I need to do to get ahead, well, the consequence of that is you no longer have a conscience and you no longer have that part of the brain which I believe connects us to God. It's the part of the brain that differentiates between good and evil and gives us contentment. So while you can break the 10 Commandments, you're going to be judged for that in the afterlife. But you can also suffer greatly in this lifetime for the evil that you do. And that's all it is.